Welcome back, everyone. We just told you about new allegations that the captain of that Italian cruise ship went off course to wave to people on shore. Those are the allegations. And as more details emerge about the deadly crash, there's already talk of lawsuits. But international treaties could make it impossible for Americans to sue, or very difficult. Mike Winkleman is a maritime attorney, and he joins me now live to weigh in on this topic. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gretchen. Thank you for having me.
All right, so many people do not know when they go on a cruise ship, and they certainly don't expect to have this happen to them. But what are their rights now with regard to suing?
Sure. I think people really don't know. I think I hear so often from my clients, boy, this was supposed to be my dream cruise, the trip of a lifetime, and they have nothing but rosy thoughts, and then something terrible like this happens, and they're faced with a very difficult circumstance, most of which comes from the cruise ticket contract, because when you go on a cruise and you buy the ticket, then you are agreeing, in essence, to a contract with them, which first requires you to file suit in Genoa, Italy. Now, depending on the circumstances, we could argue that was unreasonable. As an example, let's say someone was terribly injured, they're from, let's say, Iowa. We would argue to the judge in Miami, Judge, it's totally unreasonable and unfair to force this person from Iowa who's been terribly injured to go all the way to Genoa, Italy.
Okay.
Having said that, courts
they typically, I know what you're going to say, they typically don't agree with that assessment, which makes it more difficult for especially Americans who may have been on board this ship. Tell me, though, about the Athens Convention. What is that?
Sure. The Athens Convention is really a nasty international treaty that, if applicable, would limit the damages to $75,000. So let's take that same example of the person terribly injured from Iowa. Let's say they lost an arm. So a case in front of a jury would be worth possibly several million dollars, would be limited to $75,000. Now, what's interesting, Gretchen, is that neither United States nor Italy have ratified this treaty, the Athens Convention, but what some courts or what the cruise lines argue is, well, hey, it was in your ticket contract, you agreed to it, therefore you're bound by it. But again, you said in the intro that it was impossible. It certainly isn't impossible. There are numerous good faith arguments that we make on our clients' behalf in order to try to get around these very harsh treaties that the cruise lines put into their contract.
It's interesting because many people don't ever even read that fine print, myself included. Been on several cruises, haven't read it. Maybe now we will. Before I let you go, for the unfortunate folks who passed away in this disaster, is it different for their families if they want to move forward with a lawsuit?
Absolutely. Let's stick with the same person from Iowa, and unfortunately, let's say they passed away. Then in the United States, they fall under a federal statute called the Death on the High Seas Act, which goes all the way back to the 1920s. But what that does is it limits the damages to basically money that's provided to dependent beneficiaries. So two quick examples. If you're a high wage earner with young children, you provide a lot of benefits to them, money benefits to them. But if you're an elderly person that's no longer working and is retired, just like the couple that was found in the dining room that passed away, they probably don't provide any benefits to any dependent beneficiaries. Therefore, their cases are dramatically limited in value, sometimes even limited to the value of the funeral expenses. So very harsh statutes come into play when you're dealing with maritime law and cruise ship accidents like this.
All right, very interesting analysis by Mike Winkleman, who is a maritime attorney. Thanks very much for your thoughts this morning.
Thanks for having me, Gretchen.
Coming up on our show, back to politics. Mitt Romney using